Hello and welcome to Raise a Glass, the podcast where we talk about the stories and storytellers that shape us. My name is Eric Lintola.
And I am Hunter Danson.
And today, Hunter, we are bringing to our lovely listeners who have not heard our voices in our real time, many months, but in their experience, maybe just minutes, if not longer, possibly.
Who knows?
You've been on the edge of your seat. We are bringing a potluck. That's one of the things I really enjoy about this show. I think, Hunter, it was our second episode, or was it even our first episode was a potluck?
I guess technically our first one was. We didn't even know it at the time.
But. And I just love that part of the way we approach this podcast. Mm-hmm. Right, because we're thinking, usually we focus on one story. And in fact, we are even now working on a series of podcasts based off one story by itself, right? Mm-hmm. Which East of Eden is by itself kind of many stories together, so it makes sense. But we also have potlucks where we will share, each bring something, and then we do our grab bags, some of which are actually going to be available on our Patreon, which I am still working on. It's going to be there soon. It's going to have some bonus content from each of our now 3 seasons, and maybe some music. It'll have some fun kind of behind-the-scenes pieces, and it'll have, like I said, some of those grab bags where we are sharing 5-10 minute clips of various things that have impacted us in small ways. And so I, as that is available, it will be in our show notes. We'll point you to it. You can support us in helping this dream grow and giving us the space to,
buy us a glass.
Buy us a glass, yes, so we can raise one. Maybe even raise one to you for the for the support you bring.
Raise a glass to the patrons.
Yeah, it's Patreons.
Patronuses. Pretty sure it's patrons.
If you had a Patronus, what would it be? What would your Patronus be?
Probably I'd want it to be a wolf. Because I love wolves. But
yeah, I feel like spirit animals and Patronuses are kind of the same, and so based off what you and many other people have told me, I guess mine would be a golden retriever puppy. But I would yearn for something maybe a little bit more distinguished per se, but that really wouldn't be who I am as a person. So to be trying to lick all the Dementors away. Well, as is part of this show, Hunter, I gotta know, what is in your glass today?
I have homemade lemonade that my wife made from real lemons. And then I didn't want to drink all of the lemonade, so I put some kombucha in it. So it's like half lemonade, half key lime kombucha. And it's good. I like both of those things, and they're pretty good together. Nice and refreshing, and it's also a drink that won't put me to sleep. Which I discovered with milk. Milk will make me sleepy. But what is in your glass, Eric?
Yeah. I'm not a kombucha guy. I've tried. So this is my glass. You can see it's a tumbler. It's very heavy. It's got a pentagon bottom and a circular top. And it will soon be filled with something from my parents' new house. My dad saw it and he gave it to me. He's like, "Hey, this is going to be great for your raising a glass." So shout out to my dad. He was thinking about the podcast when he gave it to me.
That's great.
And so I haven't tried this yet, but it is Dewar's blended Scotch whiskey.
Oh my goodness!
It's aged 15 years. It's called the Monarch True Scotch, made from specially selected single malt and single grain whiskeys, married in oak cases from Scotland. And so, everything in here is at least 15 years aged.
Wow.
The monarch is named after the painter Landseer's masterpiece, The Monarch of the Glen, depicting a stag, speaking of Patronuses, which Tommy Dewar bought at auction. It is made from specially selected single malt and single grain whiskies that are at least 15 years old and have been matured in a variety of oak cases, including sherry and bourbon. Once blended together, we allow them to marry in vintage oak casks for several months and make our scotch incredibly smooth with the many subtle layers of flavor in perfect harmony.
Wow.
There's up to 40 different single malt and single grain whiskeys in this. So,
Sometimes I think the stories we tell about alcohol are more intoxicating than the alcohol.
it's true. We eat with our eyes and drink with our eyes first. Look at these beautiful seals that are pressed into it, into the glass.
Wow.
Um,
Putting the glass and raise a glass.
Yeah. Dip in a little bit more than planned.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, it's so smooth. Hunter, it's like I felt it under my tongue, and then I didn't feel it until like pretty much hit my belly.
Wow.
Like it didn't, not even all the way down.
The water of life.
That's just simply because I couldn't drink water. So, Hunter, we have shared what's in our glass. I would like to know now, what are you raising a glass and pouring one out for this week?
Well, I am raising a glass to the Chick-fil-A hint and guess game that we got in a Chick-fil-A meal, where they have pictures that kids have drawn on little cards, and you play the game. Someone gets a card, and then everyone else has to play 20 questions to guess. You ask yes or no question and guess what's on the card. And it has been a whole family game at dinner, like multiple nights.
Okay.
And we've been able to involve my wife's grandfather, who usually doesn't play games with us, and it's been a lot of fun.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So it's Chick-fil-A hint and guess.
Okay. Man, I remember trying Chick-fil-A really for the first time as an adult in the last 4 or 5 years after saying I was not going to be a Chick-fil-A person. But it's so good. Why is it so good?
It's fried chicken. I mean,
yeah, but like the Chick-fil-A sauce and
the
waffle fries and their lemonade.
Yeah.
Like they're all just delicious.
Yeah, it's at this point it's like the only fast food that we get anymore. We don't really go in for McDonald's or Burger King or any of that except for Chick-fil-A. It's the only one that we haven't kicked because it's really good. Our pastor really likes Chick-fil-A too. He mentions it in his sermons all the time.
I had a pastor that loved Taco Bell.
Oh yeah. Tyler Joseph from 21 Pilots loves Taco Bell.
There you go.
We saw him at the Taco Bell arena. Anyway, I'm pouring one out for the state of my body after working on this shed that I decided to renovate because I decided to. Because we needed, we're like, okay, we're just gonna get a new shed, and then I was out there starting to demo it, and I was looking at the frame, and I was like, what a waste, because the frame is fine, it's just the floors and all of the walls, and the shingles, yeah. So there is a hole in the roof where a tree fell, but it didn't hit anything structural, so. I'm just like, I could just do it, and I'm still committed. I'm in too deep now to turn around, but man, that floor is so stubborn.
Oh my goodness.
And it's a lot. It's a lot of work. Um,
Do you have
along
the right
with
tools?
Yeah, I got plenty of tools.
Okay.
Um, and I realized that I've absorbed a lot of handiness from my dad. I always
That's
used
good.
to be a little bit like, why didn't my dad teach me how to do all of these things? But he did. Like, I just learned them just by like, you know, I worked with him for a summer. And so even though he like never formally taught me a lot of stuff, I just kind of, I picked it up. So,
Hmm.
um, very thankful for that. Um, but also it's a lot of work and I'm tired. My back hurts.
Hmm.
And I need to write a book.
About the journey?
No, no, no. No, I have a book that I need to write
Separate book. Okay.
instead of working on a shed, but
Ah.
uh,
Do you have the book already written in your head? It just needs to get on paper, or are you still working it out? Is this part of your series
yeah,
you're
it's
working
the
on? Okay.
sequel. Yeah, I'm trying to, to take advantage of the time in the summer
Mm. Yeah.
to get more work on it done. But
Yep. Well, you're soon going to have a shed that you can hide out in.
yeah, well, now after it's done, we're gonna have to move all of the stuff that is in our garage right now back into the shed.
Ah, that's not too
So
much work. I mean, it's not no work, but it's not too much work. Not as much work as building it.
right, yeah. So anyway, what about you?
I'm going to start with my pour. I'm going to pour one out to the phone calls that one has with large organizations, whether it be internet or benefits or phone or and
Mm-hmm.
the feeling of frustration that no matter how many times each call, nothing's going to change.
Hmm.
But that you are not asking a hard thing, and it's infinitely impossible to have done, seemingly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Hunter, I know you've been on the other side of that,
Yeah.
and I do not envy anybody with that job. But to that credit, my raise. I was trying to figure out what I was going to raise class to. This is probably one of the least ultimate, long-term impactful things in my life. But I am going to raise a glass to Crystal. Crystal is the name of an individual who works for Spectrum. And my wife and I decided that we were going to cancel our Spectrum internet because it's the only option we had, but we decided that we'd rather go without internet for a
Wow.
month than spending $106 for 1 month of internet that when we first got it 4 years ago cost us $45.
Oof.
We're just not going to pay that.
Yeah.
We would rather not have it and just handle data so I called and I was like, all that automated stuff. They're like, what do you want to talk about? And I said, cancel internet. They're like, do you mean? And I just was quiet. So then they finally sent me to somebody from retention. And Crystal was very honest, very open, very understanding. And within, I don't know, about 10 minutes, it went from having to pay $106 a month for internet and $60 a month for 2 phone lines.
Mm-hmm.
So combined of almost $170 to
Yeah.
paying $49 or $46 for internet
Mm-hmm.
and $39 for phone,
Nice.
which meant as of next week next week we will be spending $70 less a month than what we would have had if I didn't call. That's $840 over the course of a year. I don't know how to visually communicate the face that I'm making.
Yeah.
So that felt like a win. Also, my
Nice.
garden's looking good, so that's a big win
All
for
right.
me.
Yeah.
That was a lot of preamble. And on this show,
We don't usually do that.
we're
That's
known for
way out of line.
brevity. We're known for conciseness. We're known for efficiency. Hunter, we have the most efficient friendship. We have the most efficient conversations. We see eye to eye on absolutely everything and agree as two individuals without strong opinions and with the exact same communication style. We always land on the same spot.
That's right.
If you don't know us or haven't listened to a single episode, you might have taken all of that as truthful. It was not. Entirely sarcastic.
So now that we have delayed your potluck feast for long enough, it's time to find out. Eric, what have you brought for us?
Let me answer that with the sound. Does that answer your question? Can you tell me what I brought?
Pokemon?
Yes, I did. Do you know what system?
It's a Game Boy. It's
Game
blue.
Boy? Game Boy Color, Pokemon Blue.
Yeah.
Those are the sounds of my childhood. And this is a game I come back to probably once every 3 years. I think I brought it up on the podcast before. If I haven't, then here it is. This is one of my favorite systems of all time. Have we talked about this, Hunter?
I don't think so. I think I know that you've had Pokemon Blue. I asked you one time, I think, and you said Pokemon Blue. Is that your original Game Boy?
So this is actually my brother's original Game Boy Color.
Wow.
And my brother passed away when I was 8. It was a pretty crazy thing. And I don't really have many memories of him, but this is the thing that I feel like ties me to him. And I don't actually remember him playing it. I'll say that I do remember him. There are a few other games I have. I remember him playing or talking about playing Tetris, Army Men 2 specifically. Oh my goodness, he loved this game. Gex, Gex. Enter the Gecko. Looks like a Geico spoof on James Bond. You can see it's even got the same James Bond thing.
Yeah, I have heard of Gex.
Wait, I have Pokemon Yellow? Oh, that must have been a gift recently. I will have to start playing that. Yes! Right, Pokemon Yellow is where Pikachu follows you, right?
I don't know.
I have Crystal as well, but that one doesn't save. It's pretty annoying. It's like, how far can you get? And then Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Nice.
In the plastic case.
Nice.
And all of this is in this weird yellow container that I look at this and all I can see is Game Boy Color, but I'm sure it was originally created with a different purpose. And yes, I know you were wondering. I do, in fact, have one of the plug-in lights.
Oh, wow.
And I did grow up playing this underneath the covers in the dead of night when I was at home. And when my parents entered the room, yes, I did take the light off and put the thing underneath my pillow and pretend I was asleep.
Wow.
That was so much of my childhood. And what do I say? I played it about every 3 years. In the last, probably over the last 12 years, I played every 3 years. So that's, I've probably played this particular game, Pokemon Blue, through all the way at least a dozen times, maybe 20. And it's just, I picked it up, I don't know, last week. I'm 13 and a half hours in, and I've been going for a slow ride. I haven't been going for the fast one. I'm trying to catch as many Pokemon as possible. I'm at 50.
All right.
And I've been trying to choose different Pokemon than I normally do to be in my starting six. Now that I'm mature and older, I figured I should give myself a more mature and wiser approach to this game.
Yeah. Who do you usually start with?
My go-to is Squirtle. I just love him so much.
All right.
I remember the original Pokemon TV show that came out in the U.S.
Uh-huh. Oh,
and
yeah.
loving the Squirtle Squad. The Squirtle Squad. Squirtle.
So if you're a noob at Pokemon Blue on the Game Boy Color,
I don't know
at this
what
point,
would be.
what's your recommendation for someone who wants to get through the game faster?
The easiest answer to that is you start the game with Bulbasaur because he can beat the first two bosses, Brock and Misty. But then if you can, between Pallet Town and by the time you get to Viridian City, it's probably helpful to get a Pidgey, just so you can have a Pokemon that as the game goes on you can fly with. Pidgey's good to have. You can have them in your starter group. But really, between Viridian City and the where the Elite Four is, I can't remember the name of the space. There's this little pocket of grass that if you walk through, you can catch a female Nidoran who becomes a Nidoqueen with a Moonstone after you evolve to Nidorina. And Nidoqueen and Nidoking can learn pretty much any move taught in this game. And so if you're able to get a Nidoqueen and maybe even two, honestly, I've never done that, but that's probably a good approach. My Nidoqueen currently knows Thunderbolt and Surf. And I'm pretty sure you can teach him pretty much any move, which all of a sudden means that Nidoqueen was taking down bird Pokemon with Thunderbolt, and then Water can take down Fire, and then Body Slam takes down pretty much anybody else. And so if you got a Nidoqueen, a Nidoran, a Bulbasaur, and then in the forest between, I think it's on Route 2, I think it is. Maybe it's Route 1. No, Route 2. You can find a Pikachu. And if you get a Pikachu, that means you can use Flash for one of the dark tunnels. And so you can kind of speed through those. Because you don't need to have a full group of all 6 Pokemon in order to win this thing. You can win Pokemon Blue with a couple OP Pokemon, and then right before you hit the Elite Four, you can hit one of the tunnels where you can find Mewtwo.
Oh.
And like level 50 Pokemon. And yes, they're not going to be as strong as if you trained a Pokemon to level 50, but they're going to be strong enough.
Yeah.
That you're really just going to lean on your 3 starters that can give you, because you just don't want to have Ivy's, at that point it'd be Venusaur against a Charizard or a fire Pokemon or a bird. But outside of that, like, you're just going to put Venusaur in to just destroy people and then throw a Nidoqueen and Nidoking, or a second Nidoqueen, and they'll have your other moves. So that's for a fast play, but I don't know. There are some people that are so good at this game that they play through without taking a single damage.
Wow.
Like, that's the level of skill. That is not where I'm at. That is not how I approach my life. I am not a perfectionist. That is not a strength or weakness of mine. But there are people that, like, somehow the place where they have the most difficulty is the first battle you have with your rival.
Oh.
Because they have to pretty much use Growl every time.
Right.
I don't understand it. That's what I got for you.
All right. So, man, Pokemon is taking me back. Because I didn't have Pokemon on Game Boy, but I was into Pokemon, as I think a lot of people were. I had Pokemon cards. I watched the
Yep.
show.
Yep.
I remember playing Pokemon at school, getting into an argument with a kid who was a Digimon fan.
Oh, Digimon's the worst.
That was about how our argument went. That was my side. That was how I argued.
Nobody likes Digimon.
Pokemon's the best. Digimon's the worst.
It's true. It's
Yeah, and we were he was like we were trying to do like a power battles. Like, okay, Mewtwo could totally defeat the strongest Digimon. And of course, like I didn't know anything about Digimon,
of
and
course not.
he probably didn't. He probably knew some stuff about Pokemon because it was so popular. But anyway, so take me back to like little Eric. How did little Eric learn all this stuff about Nidoqueen and Bulbasaur and
Little
Moonstone?
Eric did not learn this. Little Eric could not even figure out how to find Flash, and so was wandering around one of the caves in complete darkness for an hour to 2 hours trying to figure out how to get out of the thing until finally, by some stroke of luck, did. I remember the amount of I used to spend so much time trying to figure out how to even start the game, because you don't start the game by going to Professor Oak. You start the game by trying to walk into the wild, into the forest, and then Professor Oak or one of its aides comes to get you and brings you back, and that's when the game starts. But
Yeah.
I remember, I think I was walking around being like, well, I can't go there because I don't have any Pokemon. So I was like trying to talk to people. Suffice to say, it took a lot longer for me to get through the games when I was younger. But it's also a pretty well-designed game that pushes you to the next spot. And there, you get a town map at the beginning if you talk to the right person, which I have right here on the screen. You can kind of see.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty extensive. It's a pretty extensive map. But it does a pretty good job of pushing you to the next places. And they choose good times to give you HMs to, prompt the next move. Like, oh, you got Flash. Maybe you should go to a dark place. You got Strength. Maybe you can now move boulders. And in Pokemon games, I think, even now, I have played my fair share. I have not played every Pokemon game, but I've played probably an average to more than average number of Pokemon games. I do not remember the name of any Pokemon outside the first generation, but I have played many games with Pokemon outside the first generation.
Yeah.
But as if you randomly talk to people, they'll do a really good job of kind of like telling you where you should go. Like, oh, you shouldn't go. There's no switch hiding behind the poster in the gambling room. Like, that's not a good space for you to go. You shouldn't go find Team Rocket there. Like that level of overt.
Yeah.
And so you just need to figure out where that space is, and you go in there. And they still do that because they're created for an 8 to 12-year-old to be able to beat the game, but then also for a 30-year-old, 30-plus-year-old to have a blast and relive memories, but then also experience new things in them. And so, like I said, this time I'm trying to go a little bit slower. I haven't fully gone fully unique, but I traded my Sparrow for a Farfetch'd. So I have a Farfetch'd who, fun fact, is the only Pokemon in the original games that holds an item. And because he holds an item, he gets extra experience points. I've also this time been really enjoying being in the Safari Zone.
Oh.
Did you ever experience Safari Zones? Does that mean anything to you or not?
No, I started playing it a few years ago on your recommendation. I didn't get too far. I named all my Pokemon after authors. I started with Charizard, and I named him George R. Martin. And then I had a Rattata, named Frank Herbert, because of the
Okay.
Muad'Dib. And you get it?
I did.
I had a few other
That's great.
ones. Um, I think I had a Victor Hugo. Can't remember. But I didn't get too far. It's
Okay.
probably my save is probably still on my phone. I could pick it
Yeah.
up, but I think I got to like Brock. That's
Okay. You did not get far at
yeah,
all. You barely started the game.
yeah.
Safari Zone is a space about halfway through the game where you
Mm.
can enter think of it as like a nature preserve that is gives you access to Pokemon that you can't find anywhere else to catch.
Oh,
And so there's pretty common Pokemon to find there, like a Nidoran or Paris. Um, but then you can also find, or a Krabby. But then there's also some pretty rare Pokemon. If you get the right, and I think it's all like percentage based. Like if you're in the right spot and it just like that shoots a new Pokemon, I think it does a really quick like randomized, and then there's higher probabilities for some or others versus others. But if you get the right spot, you can find a Kangaskhan, who I think I've caught one once. You can find a Chansey, who evades all of your Pokeballs. You can find a Tauros, who I've never caught. You can find a Nidorino, and then if you hit the right space, you can actually catch a Dratini, who will become a Dragonair, who will also become a Dragonite, who is one of my favorite Pokemon in the game.
okay.
And so I caught a Dratini. It was a very exciting moment. And I was telling my wife about it. She was not nearly as excited as I was. And I'm currently trying to use an experience all to turn the Dratini into a Dragonair. And then I think you need to use a specific stone to turn the Dragonair into a Dragonite. I'm trying with this one also not to Google anything.
Oh, nice.
And maybe this is an important thing to say about myself is when I'm playing through games, I go the slow route. I like exploring because I find that for myself, once I beat the final boss, the game loses its interest to me. I'm no longer interested in exploring and just finding new things, even though nothing's really changed. But I feel like the primary point has been achieved, and so I'm just done with it. And so I would rather meander back and forth until I hit the finish line than go for the finish line and then try to accomplish all the extra things. Which I think is different from you, Hunter, because I know we've talked before about The Witcher, and like you have gone and completed every side quest. And I know The Witcher's not as much of a, that type of game, but like I would never do that. That's not something that's interesting to me because I don't want to look up how to do things unless I'm getting frustrated and like know that there's something stupid I've missed. And even then, I usually won't. I'd rather be in my own ignorant space and enjoy it.
I think I get tricked by my curiosity because I think of it as like trying to experience all of the content that is in the game. But I think this past year, also just getting older and having less time and energy for games, I've just decided, I'm just going to play the game the way I want to actually play the game, which is I like to do it like immersively. So I'll try to make decisions based on what I think the character would do, or like what me playing this character would do. Like I've been finally started Red Dead Redemption 2, which I've owned for like 2 years and haven't played yet, but finally started it. And I think the problem with open world games that I run into is I want to see everything, open every chest, but I'm not really. I don't consider myself like an obsessive person in that way, but I just want to know. I'm just very curious, so I'm like, But I've played enough games to know that like a lot of the time it's not really worth it, and I'll end up like backtracking just to do a certain thing, and I just feel like it's a waste of time. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna play this based on what I think Arthur Morgan would do at this point in time.
Okay.
And it's been kind of freeing just to stop worrying about trophies and whatnot and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because it really is pretty meaningless at the end of the day. Trophies.
Hey, Jordan Spieth just said something like that about golf. And like trophies, winning trophies, it's about how you're treated that matters. Not about any trophy you get.
So I have one more question. I have a question about Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like a shaping question. I don't know if you had any other things you wanted to add about it.
Yeah, I can add a few more, but take your question.
Okay. What do you think it is about Pokemon that draws 8 to 80-year-olds to it? Because I remember, when I was a kid, Pokemon was just hitting the West, and like it took over.
Yeah.
For me at least, I remember just everybody all of my friends were watching Pokemon and had cards and stuff. And lately I've a friend group is into Magic the Gathering, and so I've learned some Magic the Gathering, and I've noticed some similarities where with Pokemon cards at least, you collect the cards and you have these creatures that you use, and you do that in the game, collecting these things. So if I were to take a stab, I would say the collecting aspect of it, the sort of like owning these things that are parts of you. But I don't know. I'd like to hear from you what brought you to Pokemon, keeps bringing you back.
Well, the thing that brings me back is the connection to my brother, the connection to my own background and experience. And it is fun to kind of like feel these small spaces of accomplishment. And I think winning the battles gives you those little small like adrenaline rushes.
Yeah.
Like those dopamine hits. And I think that experience, like catching a Pokemon, like, are they going to, the Pokeball wobbles back and forth, and like sometimes they burst free.
Right.
And I think that's part of it. I think it's also a very simple game that can be played however you want to. So you can create your own internal goals. Like, I'm going to try and beat every single trainer along the way, or like I'm only going to fight the trainers I have to, or I really want to get a Geodude, like for no reason. You just want it. There's a certain way. Like I have at different times found out. I've looked it up because like things that you just can't do naturally. Looked up like how to catch a Mew in Pokemon Blue, because you can in Pokemon Blue, but not in other Pokemon games. And it's like a whole process you got to go through, and then you got to go to a certain space, and you need to walk back and forth a certain number of times, but then you can catch a Mew, and like that's a cool thing. Or if you're riding a dugong or a seal and you're carrying a specific item and you hit a certain spot, you can then duplicate whatever thing you're carrying. And so some people use that to get 99 Master Balls, or to get more TMs. Or
what are TMs?
TMs are a move like Thunderbolt that can only be taught to a Pokemon once in the original games. And HM is something like Surf or Strength, which is another move that the Pokemon learns and they have to keep on, but it provides a utility to the game. So with Surf, you can like ride on the Pokemon through the water. That's how you get on the Pokemon through the water.
Oh, nice.
Strength allows you to move certain boulders so that you can access certain spaces or certain Pokemon or certain items. Fly allows you to fly between spaces. Flash allows the blinding flash to light up a cave. Those are some of the main ones. Cut allows you to cut down a tree that's blocking the path.
Yeah.
Other later games add a lot more things. You can carry items. You can do all sorts of things. You can find berries. Some of them you can create your own Pokemon combinations. But like I've even gotten to the point where like, you can catch a legendary Pokemon with a Pokeball or a Great Ball. You don't need an Ultra Ball or a Master Ball to catch it. And so what you do is right before you wake the Pokemon up, you get to them, you save the game, you fight them, you bring them down to 1 health, and you put them to sleep with the Pokemon, and then you can throw the Pokeball and you'll probably catch it. And like that's really cool. Like that sense of accomplishment of like I just caught a Zapdos with a Great Ball. Like I still got my Master Ball hidden away. Like your Pokemon are continually learning new moves as they're growing up. And you don't even know, like, oh, are they going to evolve when they get to this level? Like, I'm like waiting, is the Wartortle going to be a Blastoise yet? Like, come on, I want it. Or like, oh, I can get a specific item that's going to evolve my Pikachu into a Raichu. Or like if you go to the right space, you can find an Eevee, and then I turned my Eevee into a Flareon because I wanted a fire Pokemon. But then I forgot that you then need to teach them fire moves. I think you got to evolve them to a pretty high level before it'll like naturally learn a fire move. Like the first fire move they learn is Ember, which is really lame. And like at that point, I was like, I give up. I'm gonna go a different route. And, all of these different things, right? These are all completely unique things. Yeah. Like you can walk around the Safari Zone for hours, or you've got to pay to go into it. You get in there you can like move 500 spaces. And then each of those times, like work on finding that Kangaskhan. And like you got to know I want a Kangaskhan and a Chansey on my team, because that feels so cool. Because I haven't done that before, and like there's 150 plus Pokemon to catch. 150, right? Actually, you can't catch all 150 in this particular one. So they did that purposely with the Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. That certain Pokemon could only be caught. Like there's like a few, right? I think you can have like 130 out of the 150 that you can have in Pokemon Blue, but then a couple Pokemon, I think, like Geodude only evolves into Graveler if you trade him like across devices. And there's a few other Pokemon.
Did you do any of that with your friends?
A couple times, not too often though.
Yeah.
We were on the young side. Right, myself and you to have Pokemon colors. Yeah. So Pokemon, like the first systems for us was like PlayStation 2. Right, like that.
I had a Game Boy Advance.
And that's even better. The first ones for us were Game Boy Advance, right? Game Boy Color. Like you could still play Game Boy Color games, but why would you choose that over the new and better Game Boy Advance games?
Tony Hawk's Underground.
And then you could get the Nintendo DS, right? Which was even cooler because it had the flip screen. So I think part of the reason I also love it so much is it's the oldest system that somebody in our generation, somebody on the young side of millennials would grow up playing, right? Because they could have had the original Game Boys and stuff like that. Mine's had this crack in the screen. You kind of barely see it right there. I think my brother did that, or if not him, then me early on. But I take it as like a connection to the game. And this thing runs on 2 AA batteries. Nice. And they run almost like forever. Like I picked it up and it was like I played like 12 hours of this game, and then finally the batteries died after I thankfully saved it. And then I just turned it back on, and they went another 30 minutes before the batteries died. And so I finally took them off, and I just saw that there were 2 corroded AA batteries in the back. And it just kept working.
Ancient batteries.
I love it. It's great. Now the game will go a lot fast. Like the batteries will run a lot faster if you have the light on.
That's true. Yeah.
But I have so many good memories on it, and Pokemon. Maybe also to answer your original question of what keeps people coming back to Pokemon. I think that for some people, and maybe some of the approach for some of the girls, at least when we were younger, and maybe some boys as well, is like the Pokemon are cute or cool, or manly or feminine or whatever you want to say. Like you can find Pokemon across the visual like spectrum of like I relate to this character. Like I've always felt like a Squirtle, yearning to be a Dragonite.
Right.
And that's like I've always wanted to be as cool as a Kangaskhan. Or and it's random things, but like there's things you can relate to those types of pieces along the way. And then Pokemon did an incredible job marketing, right? I mean, they had the games, they had the cards, they had the TV show. I have a Pokeball with a gold-plated Pikachu in there that I got from Burger King.
I remember that stuff. Yeah.
And then my sister and I, after my brother passed away, my sister was a bit older than me. She learned with me the songs to the original Pokemon CD, which I know you've heard me play them. I want to be the very best. Do, 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 do. Like no one ever was. Bow, bow, bow. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. Down, down, down. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide. Bow, bow, bow. These Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em. It's you and me. I know it's my destiny, Pokemon. Ooh, you're my best friend. In a world we must defend. Pokemon continues on, and like that song like was on a lot of teams like warm up mixes like in high school. There's some epicness to it, right? And if that plays, like every millennial is going to start singing the song, and everybody younger is probably going to start singing it too because it's just very catchy. And we're just inundated with all of the stuff, like all at the same time, right? I think Pokemon cards, at least the Pokemon cards, also opened up the opportunity for other types of cards, right? Like other types of non-sports related cards. Maybe more accurate. Like I had Star Wars cards. I didn't collect Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but I ended up with quite a few of them. I had like 4 different types of Star Wars cards, and they just kind of kept going. And obviously Magic the Gathering's been around for a long time, and I understand that now. But all of these pieces hitting at the same time, it was a great cultural moment, and then it continued, right? I remember when about our senior year of high school, junior, senior years of high school, there's a new Pokemon game that came out that you could carry one of your you could transfer your Pokemon from your device, I don't know, was it a DS or what at the time, to a Tamagotchi type thing that had a pedometer on it. And so then you could walk around school gaining experience points for your Pokemon through your steps and like showing off and probably even trading your Pokemon back and forth. And like, what a cool idea. I never did it because, I'm very much this is my thing. I'm going to own the original, or at least my version of the original.
Right.
But I respected those who did.
Did you play Pokemon Go?
I tried it, but I never had good enough data. Funny story on that, though. I was working at a boat launch for the city of Rochester, which for a summer, which was probably the worst job. Like when this game came out, like I'll say my job involved me sitting in a 6x8 or 6x10 foot box for 8 hours. And one of two things would happen. One, there'd be pretty much nobody, and I would just sit there with a book in a box that had no air conditioning in the summer. Or two, it would be a holiday or some like a weekend date or a fishing competition, and there would be an infinite number of boaters mad at me because there weren't enough parking spots, which I couldn't do anything about. I had zero control, zero power, and like I was also taking money from people. And like I'll say at this point that job, the boat launch is now entirely automated. just to give you an idea of how bad of a job it was. But I bring that up because while I was working there, Pokemon Go came out. And it just so happened that in the city of Rochester, there was one particular spot where 3 different Pokestops intersected.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about 250 feet away from my box. And people found it in like the first week. And
wow.
all of a sudden, and there were then hundreds of Pokemon goers, which are probably the most docile group of people you ever interact with. And the boaters got even more angry because these Pokemon goers were taking up their parking spots, and they called the police on them.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, they're standing, they're walking around in circles, and they're chatting. Like, I think somebody brought a boombox, and so they got probably in trouble for being a sound nuisance. It's like, this is the most innocuous event. And there's a restaurant right nearby that was so mad that Pokemon Go made their restaurant a Pokestop too. It's like they're literally bringing customers to your restaurant. Like, you are a fast food burger place across the street from the fast food or slow fast food burgers place, or across the street from the space in Rochester where people go to get burgers. Like, you need all the help you can get. Did you play Pokemon Go at all?
I didn't. I was aware of it though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was huge.
Yeah,
but
people still play it. We got some friends that do still.
Mm.
And I don't know. I after the original, I've played. Like I said, I've played through a few different games and completed them. And I find it fun. But if there's one game that I'm going to go back to for sentimentality, for connection with my family and my own background, and just for pure enjoyability, there is no pressure for me in playing this game. Like, if all my Pokemon get knocked out, I know the Poke Center I'll end up at when when my character blacks out, and I'll go back out there. I actually named my character in this one after my son, so that's fun. And I named his rival after one of his cousins.
That's
funny.
That
would be fun.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah, so that's me. I will be playing this game until I complete it, much to the chagrin of those around me who are like, "Yo, birth to Eric." Sorry, what? My non-backlit screen. It is very hard to see the things in it. Backlit screens. Backlighting is probably one of the greatest inventions created. I'll be like,
yeah,
gotta get the right angle. This is so much fun. Hunter, thanks for talking through one of my favorite things and giving me the space for that. I know it's kind of corny, or can seem kind of corny, but we're about the things, the stories and storytellers that have impacted us. And this is a story that I go back to time and time again, more often than any book, or any particular story within a book, we'll say. But that's me. I want to know, what is it that you brought for us today?
Okay. So, in answer, I think I will read the kind of like the prologue of this book that is not just a book series. Little hint there, but I think you'll guess it soon enough. There were dragons when I was a boy. There were great, grim sky dragons that nested on the cliff tops like gigantic, scary birds. Little brown, scuttly dragons that hunted down the mice and rats in well-organized packs. Preposterously huge sea dragons that were 20 times as big as the big blue whale and who killed for the fun of it. You will have to take my word for it, for the dragons are disappearing so fast they may soon become extinct. Nobody knows what is happening. They are crawling back into the sea from whence they came, leaving not a bone, not a fang, in the earth for the men of the future to remember them by. So, in order that these amazing creatures should not be forgotten, I will tell this true story from my childhood. I was not the sort of boy who could train a dragon with a mere lifting of an eyebrow. I was not a natural at the heroism business. I had to work at it. This is the story of becoming a hero the hard way. So do you know what it is?
Can you hear it?
A little bit. It's coming through pretty bad.
It's How to Train Your Dragon.
Yes.
That's why I was trying to play that music.
Train Your Dragon. Yeah.
That's the intro to Burke.
So did you know that this was a book series?
I did. I haven't read it, but I've had it recommended to me by many people. I think you included. And I'm excited for when my son is able to understand a little bit more. I think he's in the next year will be ready.
Yeah.
I've just heard incredible things about the books. That they're very different from the movies, but the first movie itself was absolutely phenomenal. And the soundtrack to the first movie is even more phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And so I hear the books are even better than that.
Well, it depends, I think. They are very different. So, my main interaction with How to Train Your Dragon was the movies, which I guess we'll start there because I think for a lot of people that's where they start with How to Train Your Dragon. That's where I started. I don't know if I can remember the first time I actually saw it. It came out in...
we were in high school.
Yeah.
2010? 2010. Yes! I got the right date. I'm proud of myself.
Yeah. 2010.
I remember.
Yeah. So I must have seen it then. And I really liked it. It wasn't like I liked it, it wasn't like a favorite series, and then, they did the second one and the third one, and I think I was at college by the time the third one was coming out.
Me too. Where'd you go?
Yeah. Oh, it started with an H.
Oh, me too. Oh, crazy.
Small
That's
world.
It's fine.
And my main connection to the movies, I think, was the fact that Toothless is Hiccup's dragon, reminded me a lot of my dog, Frodo.
Okay, see it?
And yeah, and after Frodo passed, How to Train Your Dragon, whenever I watched them, I would think of my dog and I would just cry.
Oh my goodness.
Because I missed him, and Toothless is such a... I think he's actually probably more cat-like than dog-like, the way that they
working on was finding a picture of my cat.
do the dragons. But his loyalty to Hiccup and his demeanor reminded me so much of Frodo, my border collie. And I guess I should sort of give a short summary of How to Train Your Dragon if you don't know about it. There's a boy, Hiccup, who's the son of a Viking chief, except Hiccup is not your typical Viking. He's very skinny. He's not very athletic, and he's smart. Vikings in this world are, stereotypical Vikings. But there is more to them as the series goes on. Like the other Viking characters, like his father, Stoic the Vast, played by Gerard Butler, voiced by Gerard Butler in the movies. And so one huge difference between the books and the movies, in the movie, dragons are like, Vikings and dragons are like trying to kill each other all the time. Whereas in the books, the Vikings have dragon pets already. They already sort of have dragons that they have trained, that they use for hunting, for pulling sleds, and all sorts of things. As Eric shows me a picture of his cat that looks a lot like Toothless.
Yeah.
So in the movie, Hiccup shoots down Toothless, and is going to go kill him to prove that he's a real Viking, the son of a chief, whatever, and he just can't.
A night flyer or something like that.
Yeah, Toothless is a night fury in the movies, and which is a very special, super cool dragon, and he can't do it, and so he eventually, but Toothless's wing has been damaged, so Hiccup sort of builds a relationship with him as he, tries to help the dragon fly again, and there's a whole plot, and they end up becoming friends with the dragons. The Vikings learn how to train dragons and get along with them and live with them rather than, fight them. But that's the movies. And they're good. Like, they're good movies. Every time I talk about them with people, like, oh yeah, that's a really good movie.
Especially the first one.
They're just,
the first one's so good,
yeah.
And the second and third one are good too. They're not great, but the first one's great. I think the second and third one are still, like, they hold their own. They're
good. Yeah, I think the second and third one, the thing that bothers me is they really lean into goofiness in the second and third one, and so it's really kind of jarring when you have this like really serious story, and then you just have like these dumb rough nut tough nut jokes. Yep. And it's not loud, and it's like, and the goofiness is really, it's from the books. The books are much goofier than the movies in the beginning, especially. Like, they're written for kids, like 11, 12, I think would be probably who it's written for. Gobber the Belch is crazy. There's these like crazy illustrations in here.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, there's a Viking chief named Big Boobied Bertha, so that's kind of like, like potty humor in these books. And there's the names are pretty goofy. Stoic the Vast is a good Viking name, but like Hiccup's teacher is Gobber the Belch. There's let's see. Let me get the list of characters here. Dog's Breath to the Brain. Snotface Snotlout. Warty Hog. Clueless. Kamikaze is Big Bertha's daughter. So Bertha's one of the chiefs. Kamikaze's the daughter, and her and Hiccup become friends. And I think that Kamikaze is kind of like they turn Kamikaze into Astrid in the movies. Okay. They share a lot of traits. And it's I don't know. I think the movies have a really beautiful arc, and tell kind of a really touching story about friendship and loyalty, and there's just some super cool flying scenes,
especially in the second one.
Oh my goodness! Like Hiccup and Toothless just flying through those. Flying through the cliffs and dodging through and all that stuff. It's so cool. I love that kind of stuff. And
sometimes I wish we could fly. Like, growing up, I thought the people in movies were granted the ability to do the things they saw, that I saw, before I learned about special effects and all those things. And I was like, I want to be in movies so I can fly.
Oh,
I thought they were actually flying. I want to do it. I was like, why can't we do it?
Yeah, I mean, what kid doesn't want to have a dragon and ride around on a dragon.
Right?
I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to believe in dragons so bad that I almost like convinced myself that they were real. Like I would go around with my friends in the woods and like pretend that we were seeing dragons. And I would try so hard to like actually see them
Mm-hmm.
that I would almost like make myself believe that I actually saw it. And I remember there was like a fake documentary that I don't know, for some reason my like uncle burned it for me and I watched it and it was like on National Geographic and they were unearthing this dragon and I was like, that's real, right? And and then I realized that it wasn't. But yeah. And it's funny because you read some of the author about the authors and she sort of did a similar thing as when she was younger she wanted to believe in dragons. And so the author's notes, I really like the author's notes. They're probably my favorite parts of the books. You know, the beginning and after these are like Hiccup's memoirs that you find, the way that the covers are done and stuff. They're supposed to be like Hiccup's memoirs that the author of the book has found and has translated for us.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea.
And so there's notes in the beginning and the end from Hiccup himself as an old man.
Perfect.
Which I really love. I think it's a great device. And the writing gets a little more mature at the end, too, when he's writing as an old man. So I think if you're coming from the movies and you're older, I think you'll find the books kind of jarring. Because, like, my wife and I did it first, because they're goofy, they're written for kids. Some of the dragons are pretty goofy, too. Pretty scary, but also pretty goofy. Like there's dragons that are straight up just called vampire spy dragons. Which is like, yeah, I mean, that's fine, but it's also kind of immersion. It's not like serious fantasy, you know? Quote unquote serious fantasy. But I think that if you stick with it and you take the time, and I have to say reading it out loud has been a lot of fun. Trying to do lots of voices and stuff. Like my problem is that I can't do Gobber the Velch. I can't differentiate like two large male Vikings. I can't do like two distinct voices for them. So it's very hard when Gobber and Stoic are in the same scene for me. Yeah. I just make Gobber like more, his voice cracks more. Like Hiccup instead of like Hiccup. But
it's so good. I feel like I just got a glimpse into you parenting. I love it.
And Toothless is hilarious. Yeah. Toothless in the books, he is a cat. He is a cat in the books. He's the size of a cat, and he acts like a cat. He chews up Stoic's underwear. He is constantly hungry. He's like really selfish, as cats are. And it's so funny, and you kind of grow to love him. And I think that if you stick with the books and you dig into them, you will find moments and storylines that really rival and at certain times surpass moments in the movies. Because another huge difference is that dragons actually talk in the books. So Hiccup actually talks to Toothless, and that's part of why Hiccup, why he's special, because he learns to speak Dragonese, which is a really silly made-up language. I'm not sure if I can find a sample here.
So dragons can only speak to each other and to humans that learn Dragonese?
Yeah. The dragons speak Dragonese, and usually humans don't bother to learn it, because the only book, like the actual How to Train Your Dragon book, the only line in the book is yell at it. Yeah, and that doesn't work for Hiccup because he's not big. He's not like a normal Viking, so he has to figure out a different way. So he learns how to speak Dragonese, which is like, here are some common dragon phrases to get you started. Oh, here, I'll start. Learning to speak Dragonese. In order to train your dragon without using the traditional methods of yelling at it, you must first learn to speak Dragonese. Dragons are the only other creatures who speak a language as complicated and sophisticated as humans. Here are some common dragon phrases to get you started. Nia crappa ina de husas pishu. No pooing inside the house, please. Me mama no like it yum yum on de bum. My mother does not like to be bitten on the bottom. Pishu kindly gaba ut mi friundly. Please would you be so kind as to spit my friend out? Do it one more time. Let's try that again. Which made my son, my 4-year-old son, just laugh forever instead of go to sleep. But
I love that so much.
Yeah, it's so silly. But it's also like, Hiccup develops a really kind of deep and complex relationship with Toothless, which he does have a very deep relationship with Toothless in the movies, but it's not spoken. It's unspoken.
Which it makes sense if they're for them trying to lean into more of like the emotional like piece of it and like moving away from the silliness. Like that would have prevented that from happening. Yeah.
But also the first book, the first one's one of my favorite ones. There's 12 of them, I think. We're on the 12th one. At the end of the first book, there's a Sea Dragonus Giganticus Maximus, which is like a huge dragon, the size of a skyscraper. And Hiccup talks to it. And it's a super cool scene. Like, if you can get past the kind of like, made for children prose, like, and just imagine it, like, it's really, really cool. It's Smaug talking to Bilbo, and it's Hiccup talking to this giant, like, hypnotizing sea dragon, like, trying to be smart, but also trying not to get hypnotized. And it's super cool, and it's really cute. The sort of way that Hiccup survives is because, dragons, she repeats it over and over, is that dragons are very selfish. They won't do anything unless there's something in it for them. They're like cats, which no matter how much we love cats, we can't deny that they are selfish.
You love my cat.
But, yeah, right. But I do too. But at the end of the first book, and spoiler alert, I guess, Toothless ends up saving Hiccup. Like, Toothless risks his life to save Hiccup at the end of the first book, which is really, kind of hints at how Hiccup is able, to build a relationship with these dragons. And, by the end, like, I think that the books really surpass the movies in the epicness of the, it's like a full-scale dragon apocalypse. And, the movies have some pretty big moments. Like, I love that fight with the huge dragon at the end of the first movie. And, the second one is good with the alphas. I don't know. Third one's probably my least favorite. There's like good moments in it, but
I don't really remember. Is the third one with the Light Fury, or is that the second one?
The Light Fury and the villain who like
the snow one from the
is
snow?
like he's like a master hunter.
Oh, okay.
Good. But in the movies, the most that's in danger is like the people of Berk, and maybe the world at large might be conquered or whatever by the bad guy, but in the books, it's like the whole world is being burned by angry dragons, and if Hiccup can't figure something out, like, they're all toast.
Let me say something that's super controversial. I think that's one of the weaknesses of the Harry Potter books.
Oh,
is at the very end of the last book, like, what's at stake? Hogwarts and the people there, and then possibly the entire world, possibly, but it's not. there's no the grand battle is very localized and very small, ultimately, and it kind of makes it fall a little short to me that the series that is so encapsulating and grows so much, like, it doesn't have a cosmic, issue. But there's also strengths in that, I understand. But it falls a little short to me from that.
To save it for our Harry Potter episode.
I hadn't thought about that until just this moment. So I thought about it, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And do each of the books end with that type of cosmic thing, or is it the entire series is building up to this cosmic?
The whole series is building up to it.
Okay.
In each one, there's, I don't know if she really planned it out. I don't think she did from the beginning. I think she might have started figuring it out like halfway through the series. But I have to say, it's very well plotted, especially like once you get to like 3 and after. They all kind of, you could see it's almost written like mystery novels.
Okay.
Where they introduce some sort of plot thing that you hold on to throughout the book, and it works back into the climax. And
is your 4-year-old able to follow that?
I'm not. I think he gets a fair amount.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
Sometimes I'll hear him playing, and he'll be talking about the Dragon Furious coming to burn the town or something. But it's also another strength of the books is that the characters are bigger, like the side characters. In the movies, it's mostly about Hiccup. In the book, Snot-Faced Snotlout is a huge deal, like because he's Hiccup's cousin, and Snotlout would have been next in line for the throne if Hiccup hadn't been born. So, because Hiccup's the only heir.
I'm guessing Snotlout is much more Viking-y.
He is much more Viking-y. He beats up Hiccup on a regular basis. Hiccup and Fishlegs. Fishlegs is Hiccup's best friend in the books. Fishlegs is, unfortunately, he's very stereotypical nerd. But he gets his character moments, towards the end. She builds him into a fuller character as Hiccup's, best friend, the one person who really sticks by Hiccup. And then you have Kamikaze, who the name is not as good as Astrid, but as a character, I think she has more going on.
Astrid is a really epic name. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and she's a very epic character in the movies, too, but, the movies have less time to build the characters, so...
So, Hunter, you didn't share yet how you were introduced to the books. Like, what made you decide to pick them up?
I always try to read the source of adaptions.
Okay. Like, before you watch the adaptation, do you try to do it, or?
Usually, if I can. With How to Train Your Dragon, I wasn't really aware of the books, so...
And if you had
when the movies came out... Yeah, I mean, because, they're really marketed as kids' books with the illustrations and everything. And I was too old at that point.
Not old enough.
And not old enough. That's true. So I think I was just in the library at the kids section, and I saw that they had them all there. I think we started with book 2 because they didn't have the first one. And we found this one at might have been free. I don't know where we found it. I just picked it up off the shelf because it seemed like I had watched the movies with my son, and I was like, all right, let's read it. And we have a bedtime book. We do like short books. And then we'll do like 3 short books, and then we'll do a bedtime book, which is like a chapter book.
It's a long
And
bedtime.
so, yes, we have a very developed bedtime routine. It is not optimized for efficiency, but it is optimized for love.
I love it. I love it.
And reading.
Yep. Love of reading.
Yes. Yeah, so we just kind of picked it up and have just been going with it. You know, we finish it and we go back to the library, get the next one. And they've really kind of won me over, you know, because if you've heard the podcast before, you know I have issues with. I have strong opinions about prose and fantasy and things. But I think the fact that they're written for kids really kind of disarmed me. And also just reading it aloud kind of forced me to take my time with it. And you know, the prose is, there's a lot of adverbs, too many adverbs in my opinion, but you know, it communicates well. And I'd say I'd hazard to say it's more creative than your, you know, average window prose. Should I say how it shaped me, or do you have any other?
After reading so much of this series, does it make you want to write a book series or a book or a short story that is geared towards younger kids? Is that something that you would find interesting?
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be interesting to see what I want to do after I finish The Blades of Dawn, because right now my mind is all tied up in knots with that, and the world building and everything, and all the loose ends that I've gave myself to tie up.
Yeah.
So I just don't have like as much capacity
Totally.
for other stuff, but it is something that I do want to do. I've sort of tried to write certain stories that I, you know, would want to read to my kids. I don't think I would, if I didn't have kids, I wouldn't want to. Probably wouldn't even be reading this. How to Train Your Dragon. And if you think about, you know, Tolkien started writing The Hobbit for his kids. I think he was always building the Lord of the Rings in his head, but The Hobbit really came out of telling a story to his kids. And I think there's really, I think that fantasy in particular really, part of the power of it, just the idea of saying once upon a time, which Tolkien talks about in his essay on fairy stories, how once upon a time is kind of like the perfect intro to a fantasy story, because it immediately separates your mind from the present world, you know. You could just be telling a story that happened a couple days ago, but you could also be telling a story that happened in the realm of the Fairy King, in the Netherworld. And I love that. I always I read a lot of capital L literature, which, you know, is set in the present day, and or when the author was writing, or before the author was alive, but in the real world. But whenever I sit down to write, it's not long before I want to have something supernatural happen. You know,
Yeah.
I want to be visited by ghosts or aliens, or shoot sparks out of his eyes, or something weird.
I love it.
But I think children's stories have a real whimsical power to them, because I think there's really, when I think about writing, I think about, there's two main sides of it, for me at least. One side is truth, writing something that's true, something that's good, something, that might be painful to say or to think about, but something that needs to be said and thought about. Um, and, because you can really process pain in writing in a way that is really hard to do anywhere else, especially, if you do it in fiction and you tell a story as you're doing it. But then the other side of writing is also just whimsy, is just going somewhere else and doing something different, imagining yourself somewhere else. I think of the whimsy of Don Quixote imagining himself a knight, and of course Tolkien, and is full of whimsy. And I think children's stories in particular, you can do all, you can accept, a child can accept almost anything in a story. There can just be dragons, and that's, I would love to write something for my kids. And I think, talking a lot, but I think the final, I was trying to think about how to Train Your Dragon has shaped me. I think most recently it's really kind of brought me back to my childhood, and those times when I was trying to really see actual dragons in the world.
Yeah,
I did see them. I did.
yeah.
I believe it. Because I think it's easy as an adult, especially in an age where we can just constantly distract ourselves, and not process things. We kind of forget about childhood. Like I was reading Steinbeck's letters. He wrote these letters to his editor when he was writing East of Eden, which hopefully I'll share more of on our East of Eden Part 2 episode. But he said, I think some people just don't remember childhood. I think they just literally forget it, in the hustle of adult life. I think it's easy. It's happened to me. I forget about looking for dragons and how everything is new and exciting, and you can play make believe, and so that's, I think, How to Train Your Dragon has really brought me back to that and had me thinking a lot more about what it's like, what is it like to be my son, to see this house that we live in this world that we take him around in, as he is seeing it for the first time in his childhood, which is a totally different perspective than how I see it.
Yeah. I love it. It's amazing getting to see the world through your kids' eyes. Excited about seeing that continue to grow for me as my kids get a little bit older and get to know their personalities better and get to experience firsts with them and see what sticks out in their minds and what they love and what they don't love and what scares them and what scares me. Same thing. Makes me want to write more.
Yeah.
By write more, I mean write for the first time in a while. I miss that. So much more work than sitting and watching a thing.
Oh, yeah. But it also feels like you're doing nothing. Sometimes it's like, what am I doing here? Just thinking about this word.
Yeah.
I should be doing something more productive. Except it only feels more productive
thanks, Hunter, for sharing and illuminating for me a series that I know the movies of, but have never read the books. It's making me want to check them out. I'm reading with my kids and get back into writing some more. I think that would be. Sometimes it's even more fun to write some of this stuff than to read it, even though I know what I write does not match the published quality of many of the things that I read. In terms of story, total story. It also feels great to get back into this conversation that we have together. It's a type of storytelling. It's sharing out what we've been impacted by. And I'm excited to bring more stories, more storytellers to the show in the coming weeks. Hopefully we'll get back into the swing of things again, and you know we're going to be doing part 2 of East of Eden, and we've talked about a few other pieces that we'd love to talk about that hopefully will be coming your way soon.
Yeah. Thank you for listening. If nothing else, I hope we inspire you to read and write. So Stoic's shield did save Hiccup's life after all. If it had not been there, the tooth would have impaled Hiccup like a prawn on a stick. As it was, it buried itself deep, deep, deep into the bronze center of the shield and quivered there, blazing with green-edged dragon flames. Stoic lifted the shield, terrified that the tooth might have pierced through to his son. But Hiccup was unharmed. His eyes were open and he was listening for something. He was listening for a strange sound that seemed to be coming from the flaming tooth itself. It was the sound of wheezy, echoing singing, like the wind blowing through coral caves, and it went something like this. I tell the mighty big blue whale his life is over soon. With one swish of this armored tail I put out the sun and moon. The winds and gales are quivering when I begin to roar. The waves themselves are shivering and trembling back to shore.